So welcome to Questioning Reality with me.
Uh-oh.
So really in the hot seat. You weren't expecting such high production coming down here. You were just ready for a little chill time and a little conversation. And there's a whole team waiting for you. What did that bring up for you, Katia?
Well, actually, we've got such a lovely banter in normal life and such a flow that for some reason I thought that we were going to come down into this den and it was going to be just us two, making jokes and getting on with it. And I got down here and there was a complete setup for it. So, it brings up a lot of stuff. So one of them is, this is more serious than I thought it was. And the other one is, how wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? How beautiful. I mean, it's really great. I love the setup.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brent, can you hear okay? Yeah? Okay, good. We don't want anyone to miss your lovely voice and obviously what beautiful things are going to come out. I can't wait to see myself. So, tell people a little bit about yourself, because I know you as Katia Boustani, an awesome rebirther, but also more importantly, a friend who just awesome to hang out with and to have a laugh and to see life quite, I think, through a familiar perspective and just having a laugh. But why don't you share a bit about yourself?
Well, I think that laughing and having a good time with people is the most awesome thing of life. I think it's really, really important to really enjoy life and laugh and really have a great time. But that's not, probably why I've been invited here.
Well, a little bit, to be fair.
I'm well known as somebody who is, I'm a prominent figure in the breathwork world. So I have been in breathwork for 30 years, starting out with different healing, massage, working with the breath, with yoga, with pranayama. And then eventually I met Rebirthing Breathwork, which was the thing that really changed my life. It really changed my life because I already knew how powerful the breath was and how powerful energy is, and that energy can take you into a completely different reality. It can make life very, very different. And I also, of course, knew and realized that life is just perspective. So life is as you see it, right? But when I got into the rebirthing, which is this circular breathing, which is, so most people who've tried conscious connected breathing type of breath work, okay, that means breathing in and out without a pause for a certain period of time, like an hour or 45 minutes. And that type of breath work really does take you into a different reality. So it takes you into your subconscious mind, and it also takes you into spiritual states, and you can have all sorts of visions or messages or spiritual connection and stuff like that. The first time I had a session, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that could happen, right, to somebody during a session. And so it really altered my reality of what was going on, because I was going through a very, very difficult time in my own life. And it changed my perspective of my life. It changed my reality to the point where I was able to break free of those patterns and start to move forward in the way that I wanted to move forward in life. So that was awesome. And then I really, really got into it, and I started inviting or going to the teachers who were doing these seminars all over the world, the best ones. I wanted to go to the best ones. And eventually I connected with Leonard Orr, who is the founding father of breathwork. And that was an incredible thing, because being around a person like that really does change your reality, right? You start to see things not only from a different perspective because your mind changes, but a person like that in your life really confronts your perspective of life and tells you, well, okay, everything that you believe is not true. Everything, I mean, you can create a truth, a set of beliefs which can make things true. And so magic can really happen. Magic is right there. Right? So I continued. I stayed with him, working with him for quite a long time. He only acknowledged 5 rebirthing breath masters in his lifetime. and I'm one of them. So that's why I'm really well known in this field, and people eventually come to me and do my course because most people, or a lot of people, do question their reality and do question the reality of what's going on the planet right now, and are seeking for new ways to change things. And when they eventually come to my course, they get those different perspectives. They get an understanding of how they can move energy, how they can move energy with their breath, how they can connect with nature, how life can be very, very different, how they can be more prosperous. And so that's just a little bit about me. And yeah.
Beautiful. You know, I just want to delve into the idea that, you know, when you were going through your tough time then, and when you learn a new skill, something like breathing, and it brings a whole new perspective.
Right.
It's so empowering to know that all it is something within yourself, that you shifted something within you that then shifts your whole perspective on the outside. Because when I was caught in my crazy patterns and my conditions and all entities, as you know, we can sometimes call them, we don't feel like we belong to ourselves, and we're doing our best to think that it's the outside that we need to change, or it's someone we need to change, and we can often get caught up in that cycle. And you know, really the whole point of this and having conversations is people to start to understand that it is within. It is understanding that there are tools out there that you may not be happy in your current life, but some modality like rebirthing can completely change your whole life without you having to change anything on the outside.
Right.
And just how you relate to yourself and to the external world. So, you know, it's a beautiful thing to see and it's not that like it's hard work. I mean, yes, for me personally, lying down and breathing, you know, it used to be difficult for me. I mean, you know, you're so well trained, you can see people's breathing deviations, and it's right that, you know, how somebody breathes is how they live their life.
Right.
Could you kind of explore that a little bit and just sort of, so anybody watching here?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Anybody out there?
So first of all, you know, the first point is that, I mean, I remember my first instructor gave me this affirmation, which was, for things to change, first I must change. Okay. And I remember repeating it over and over again because I was so desperate at that time to change my reality, because even though it appeared that I had this, you know, I had an ideal life, I didn't, because inside of myself I was a total mess and I was very unhappy. And so it really, really is true that what's on the outside of you is just a reflection of what's on the inside of you. And so the more that you start to understand what's going on the inside of you, the more that you start to understand also that there are different tools, different techniques, but also the will to explore. Okay, so one of the things that the breath actually does is that it helps you to explore what's going on the inside of you. And so when you really start to understand it, when you really start to be in flow with it, and you see it as that instead of trying hard to get it right. So sometimes people, when they're having a session with me, I can understand a lot of their stuff because they're trying so hard to get it right, okay? And so that already tells me a lot about them, because I think to myself, this person is struggling so hard to get it right that there must be, you know, certain insecurities going on inside of them, and it reflects the pattern of what's going on in their life. Because if you're always in a struggle trying to get it right, and you are actually just repeating that in your life, you might not even be aware of it. But there's always something inside of you which makes you think that you're less And that's why you're trying to get it right, okay?
And then that shows up in your life by, if you're trying to be right, how would that show up in somebody's life? How would they, how they act it out?
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, if you've got a work situation and a figure of authority comes in, you feel nervous, you feel like you haven't done your job right, that somebody else deserves that job more than you do, that you feel fake. Why am I in this job?
The imposter syndrome comes up.
You're incapable. You're incapable of having a relationship of equality with the authority figure, which is something which happens very, very often in life to a lot of people. They get into these situations with these authority figures. So whether it's your boss or whether it's your partner can be an authority figure. Even your child can be an authority figure to you. Okay.
When you say your child, because I mean, this is really quite an interesting topic, because I remember reading a book called Silently Seduced, by Joseph M. Adams, I think his name is, and it was so enlightening because it was about energetic incest, how parents make their children partners, because we can be in a dynamic and the wife could be upset with the husband, and the wife then becomes intimate with their child, and then the husband, father can feel excluded in the special connection. And,
Well, that is a super interesting topic, and it is something which happens, which is quite common, okay? Because when people get together and they fall in love and they get married and they're very, very intense about each other, that all comes with a set of circumstances. And in life, we continue changing, we continue evolving, and so having the expectation that closeness, that intensity is going to last forever is already getting you off on the wrong footage, right? So what normally happens in a relationship is that people really want to create a family and they're really happy. But when they actually do have children, I even believe, so other people might think I'm wrong, but I believe that it's perfectly natural and normal for the focus of the woman especially, but also of both of them, right? The focus of the woman especially to go into nourishing this child and wanting I think both parents want the child to grow up in the best way possible, but they've usually got different ideas about how that can happen, right? Because especially in this sort of situation where there's a child involved, and you have put all of your love and effort into manifesting this human being in front of you, then really all of your insecurities and your stuff comes to the surface, because there's this little human being and you might not like the way that your partner is behaving around it or whatever it is, okay? So this lack of alignment starts to become clearer and clearer. And having a child is actually quite a completely different reality. So I always tell my friends and stuff, people who haven't had children, I always say to them, it's a real before and after situation. You've got no idea what it's like to have a child until you have a child, right? Because sometimes I get single people which tell me, people change so much when they have children and they should keep their old personality and all of this sort of thing because they miss their friends, for example. But the truth is that when you've got another human being that you're responsible for, and there is also that primal primitive instinct that you want to be really close to that being, right? And so usually unconsciously, this whole entire thing develops, and quite often the relationship between the parents starts to deteriorate, okay? Now, when the relationship between the parents, it could be just, having all of that new responsibility. For example, maybe the father is going out to work, but when he comes home, the mother is really stressed, the baby's crying, so he tries to come home a little bit later because he's also stressed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so emotional incest or the silent seduction of a child. So we have to be very clear here that the silent seduction or emotional incest, rarely means physical incest. It doesn't mean that the parent actually touches the child or there's any form of sexual abuse. No, we're talking about a dynamic. We're talking about a dynamic which is very confusing for the child because quite often either the mother or the father, because they're not getting the love they need from their partner, and they're lonely and they're very intense about raising this child in the correct way, they replace the partner with the child. So really what that means is that they start to put all of their love on that child, okay? So that's a wonderful thing in some ways. But what happens is that the child starts to become stifled and feel responsible for that parent's happiness. Okay, and the parent, without wanting to, starts to put that expectation also onto the child. And this creates a dynamic which is unhealthy.
Yeah, Katia, you were saying. So I had to jump out the room there because the room is rather hot when the aircon's not on, and the T-shirt I was wearing was not suitable for such a podcast. It was very thick. So anybody wondering why I've changed T-shirts, that's why.
They won't notice.
So go on.
Yeah. So I think, I'd pretty much finished what I was saying in the sense that the dynamic between the child and the parent becomes extremely intense. And it's too much responsibility for the child because a child should be free to explore their own personality. They should be free to not be responsible for a parent's feelings or the parent's happiness or healing or anything like that. But it's just too much.
You know what? 100% agree. Yeah. And I'm sure people listening out there, would. And it's very difficult when you're caught up in that dynamic, especially that energetic one we were talking about, silently seduced, that you're looking for your child to cater to your needs. And the child wants you to feel loved.
Right.
Because they want to feel loved.
Of course.
And, and it's unconditional loving from the child. I remember when I was reading this book, I was speaking to a client of mine and became aware through the conversation that she was actually in that position with her husband and the children, and we could see this unhealthy dynamic play out. And I remember seeing myself as a kid. I was doing my best to please my dad, put myself in, harm's way ultimately, because his happiness and him not basically stressing and being angry was more important than any of our happiness. And I feel, especially for me, because I would put myself out my way and, just help where I could. And when you do this and you're focusing so much on your parents, you don't really know yourself.
Absolutely.
And as a child growing up, when you're focusing on others because you feel like you're not getting love, in the family, that you don't really know who you are and what it is that makes you happy and your own core, because for my family's, sake, it was not much of the care and attention for the children because, we lost our mum at a young age. My dad wasn't one who particularly wanted children, but of course his wife did. And, and so when she's gone, he's then left with children.
Right.
So I don't blame him. It's not something he, particularly thought was going to happen. But I understand how we can fall into these positions, and especially as a child who really just wants love and not this environment of toxicity and anger and anything else. And how, as a child then grows up in that way, for me, it was very much, who am I? Who am I when I'm not focusing on meeting somebody else's needs because of my fear of, not being loved or being in this sort of unsafe environment. Just try to make it better.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and it definitely carries on into adult relationships. It's as you said, you don't know who you are without when you're not trying to please somebody else. Your whole entire attention is on pleasing somebody else and making them happy, and in that way you lose your own identity. And it's one of the hardest things to reclaim your identity, to really understand what it is that makes you happy, because it's such a part of your body, it's such a part of your cellular memory, your physical system, that when you get into situations which are kind of normal and healthy, you feel it can bring up even anxiety attacks, or you feel like you don't belong, or this sort of thing is not for you, or whatever it is. And I think that it's very important to, and I always like to mention this, that our parents, like in this day and age, we sit and we talk about these things openly, and there is a lot of information out there, and people know this material now. So even if you go on Instagram or anything, there's so many people you can follow and understand this deep, deep psychology of what's going on. But our parents didn't have that luxury, and they had absolutely no idea what was going on. They came from a completely different paradigm. They were used to corporal punishment. Physical punishment was normal for them. Okay, now it's horrific. If somebody's punished physically, everybody gets very upset. I remember my mother was definitely physically punished, and so was my father, and that was normal for them. And so every person is just bringing in what their own paradigm was, and especially if they're uneducated about it. Okay, so now we've got the luxury to know that, okay, maybe I was physically punished, and even if I have an urge because of that physical punishment to punish my own children physically, I won't do it because I know, okay? But in those times, the families were kind of randomly like children just grew up randomly in whatever situation they were put into. And so I think it's amazing that all that information is out there, but I also think it's very, very important to acknowledge that our parents didn't have that information, and they really tried their best.
Yeah.
Right? And to have a little bit of compassion for your parents and really understand that. And the thing is, though, that afterwards you get into a situation where you have to find out who you are, okay? And those sort of patterns, they're so deeply rooted inside of you that even if you do loads of courses and study over and over again and know all of the information, there will be somebody who'll come into your life and trigger you again, and that stuff will come to the surface again. And it really just depends on how willing you are or how desperate you are to get out of that situation, because you know the pain that it involves. And one of the most important things and important ways to be able to overcome these sort of situations and patterns more quickly is to just spend time getting to know who you are. So get away from your family. I know that a lot of people think that that's crazy and all of this sort of thing. No, you can't find your identity until you get away and you become independent of your family.
100%.
Right?
I had to do something with myself because I saw my identity based on how they saw me. So I was living out the dynamic, even if I wasn't with them. But could I step up and be myself if I felt they knew who I really was?
Right.
And I was then holding that as more important than my own life, my own my own sovereignty, like who actually am I? And I remember a coach I was seeing at that time, and he said, "Do a Facebook Live about your life."
Right.
And I'm setting up my camera in my room, and I'm walking around. It took me like 45 minutes to actually, click start, and it was just called like my story or my life or something. And I was just sharing. Just sharing and talking about my life, and my fears were coming true in that my brother jumped on And then my dad jumped on and watched. As I'm talking, I could see my face going red like this.
Wow.
Because, you know, it was scary because I'm talking and they're watching. And I guess I was fearful of their judgment.
Right.
Or whatever it is they were going to say. But as I carried on talking, the feelings left and I felt more confident. And the story didn't own me anymore.
Absolutely.
The story of what I thought I was connected to my childhood. You know, we were in our childhood, we've all done embarrassing things. We've got shameful things going on. And we feel that because the shame is trauma bonding or shame bonding, you know, we share something that is unique in our families. And to step away from that, you're so entangled in it that it's like you don't know who you are without it, or when you are by yourself. But when you do take that leap, it's extremely liberating. But it kind of shatters. It shatters the belief. It just shatters who you think you need to carry on being. And then once you do step out, which is extremely scary for anybody to do something like this. I'm not saying everybody go out and do a Facebook Live, though. Yeah. You know, it could help. Yeah. But it was the start of the journey, and it was just the start. And then there was many, 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 many layers. But it was taking that step out to say, "Hey, I'm not Alex the brother or Alex the son. I'm not that anymore. I am Alex, and I'm stepping out there." So. That's going out there for the family. I mean, it's really. Yeah. I mean, what was your life? I mean, you obviously had your own journey stepping away from your family.
Absolutely. So just on that, the other thing is that every family has got its secrets, and most families have got an unspoken rule that you don't share the family secrets. Okay. So what you did was extremely courageous. And I congratulate you because it's very, very scary to be out there talking about what's happening in your family. And you know that there is that unspoken rule. You know that they're going to judge you for it, and you still did it. And that's so brave. And really, it's amazing. Really.
Wait until you read the book.
Yeah. Looking forward to the book. I really am. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Make sure it's very short because remember people's attention span. I'm just kidding.
Well, they're only going to watch 20-second clips from this podcast.
Exactly, right. Okay, so with my family, I came from a, Lebanese family environment where community was very important. There was the extended family. When I really think about it, or I think of that little girl, right, one of the feelings that I have, which is very overwhelming, is that I was never really alone and somebody was always watching, okay? And so in that, and of course, like in all families, there's rules. Okay. And so if you break the rules, then you get punished or you get in trouble or, whatever that meant for your particular family. Okay. So one of the things in my family was that there was this big community. There were people around all the time and there were a lot of rules and we were very religious and there was also that concept of God watching you all the time. So if your family wasn't watching you, God was watching you. So you had to do the right thing. Otherwise, you would be punished. Yeah. It was worse to get punished from God because you'd be burning in the pits of hell for all eternity, which...
It's pretty frightening stuff.
It's a big one, right? So... and of course, like all families, my family was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody who comes out and tells you, that they had, I don't even know if there are functional families. I mean, yes, of course, families can function, but because we're all human beings and we're all just trying to do our best, by default, every family has got dysfunctional parts to it, right?
That's what makes them so unique.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is why it's important also to get away from the family dynamic and create who you are by yourself. Because whenever you're around them, and many people usually ask me, why is it so hard when I'm around my family? You know, why does all this stuff come up? And it's simply because when you were a child, so many things happened that you don't remember now, that even if you get together with your family at Christmas dinner, like you get all of those movies about Christmas and the families fighting and everything, well, of course they're going to fight because all of you trigger each other, because it's not what's happening now that's coming up. It's what happened in the past, right?
And a lot of it's so far back that, and you're so young, you don't remember
Yeah.
why the triggers are even coming up in the first place.
Totally, right. And so particularly with my family, yes, of course, there was a lot of trauma, like with most families. My father died when I was 10. That was extremely traumatic because he was the person that I understand now, really the person that was holding the family together, because he was the authority figure. And we were not really, when he was present, there was no space to stray, okay? And so that brought a sense of safety in a way, right? So when he died quite suddenly, we had a lot of chaos in our family. Okay, so this happens in families when either one of the figures leaves or dies or decides to change. Okay, so if one person in the family dynamic changes, then everybody falls apart. The family dynamic falls apart, right? That's why it's so difficult that when you become an adult and you change, your family really finds it difficult to cope with the new person that you are or your new personality. And all you're doing really is just trying to find yourself. But then it becomes a huge chaotic thing within the family, right? So at that time, I felt really abandoned, really abandoned. And I really recognize and realize now in hindsight as an adult how difficult that situation must have been for everybody. But because I was a child, the only thing that I really experienced was abandonment. And I think that really imprinted in my cellular memory that I'm alone. I'm alone in this, right? And that's how I lived the majority of my life. And I still do it. So, for example, I'll get, I have relationships, obviously, and I've been married and I have children and I love being in relationships. But there is a part of me that always comes back to, you're on your own here, you're the one who has to make it work, even if I'm getting supported, right? And these are the sort of things which are very difficult to overcome because, deep down inside, it's almost an unconscious behavior. So you start behaving like you're alone, and that's very difficult on the people around you.
How does one stop? I mean, obviously, we have so many different modalities out there, and rebirthing is such an awesome tool. And yet, even at 10 years old, feeling abandoned,
right?
That is still sort of a current throughout your life,
right?
That you still use that as your home,
right?
It's like your home emotion. Do you feel like it's something you could ever finally? Would it be the word healed, or let go, or never feel that again?
Right?
Is that possible?
That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. The only thing I can say is that in my experience, for a very long time, I really thought that I was healed of the majority of my patterns. Okay, I felt really, really in power. I felt empowered.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was just mentioning it to you before that when I was with Leonard, who is my mentor, and I was so lucky to have him as a mentor, and he was so close, that there was a period in my life that I didn't have a relationship for, several years. And he said to me, you feel really good, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I feel amazing. And he said, oh, okay. And he said, do you feel really empowered? And he was asking me all of these things. And I was saying, yeah, I
Setting you
feel
up
fantastic.
completely.
And yeah, I feel really powerful. And he goes, okay, good. Go and get a relationship and see if you still feel like that in a relationship. And, it was like a slap in the face in a way, right? But because I trusted him so much, and, there's always that thing, of course, you need to have a look even at that relationship. So I lost my father when I was 10, and he really was a father figure to me. And I wanted to feel my father close, even if he wasn't present. And Leonard, I used to listen to Leonard. So if Leonard told me to do something, I would do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did, and I started having relationships so that I could explore myself within the relationships. Okay, and one of my favorite things that he always says or said is, it's very easy to be a guru when you're alone. It's very easy to be at the top of your field, or when you're in a cave. Okay, or to be totally spiritual, but can you do that when you're having a relationship? And
Or can you do that when your parents are living with you in your
right,
home, or
exactly,
whatever it might be?
exactly.
Well, that's the monks say. You think you're
Yeah.
enlightened, go live with your parents for a week.
Exactly,
And it really is so
Yeah.
so challenging because
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I 100% hear where you're going with this,
Yeah.
and to go back to
Yeah.
this feeling and for yourself. Okay, going to the relationship. When you were
Yeah.
out there looking for that relationship, did you
Right.
know you were looking for like your father consciously, or did it just happen to be that was your next relationship, somebody who was fitting in the role of your father?
Well, no, I think that I've always been very, very conscious because I love, not only do I love psychology, but I love to go deeper and deeper into psychology. And I love also to reflect on myself and go into alternate states and see what's happening. And every single relationship that I have, I analyze not only mentally, like it's not only that I know, oh, okay, who does this person represent in my life, right? But also in like non-cognitive ways. So I go into the deep exploration of what's happening when we are not talking, when we are just being or just making love or, any of those sort of situations. I will delve deeply into my psyche through my breath and in other ways to explore the parts of myself which are hidden. And I find that super interesting. And so I think there is a lot of awareness in the majority of my relationships of what's going on.
Yeah.
And whenever I am in a relationship, I always also hold the space for myself within that relationship, regardless of whatever else is going on around me, because I really view life as an opportunity to get to know me better. Now I feel that. Okay. In the past, my relationships were unconscious before I started really getting into this work. But now, when I have relationships, I'm pretty conscious of what's going on in the relationship. But it takes time to go to the depths of it and understand if I want to continue with something or not, okay, or if I've gotten what it is out of this relationship. And
How do you know you get to that point?
Well, I think that rather than saying anything happens, I really believe that when you get more and more awareness about every single relationship that you're in, and, that might sound tiring to people. So it's not like I'm sitting there writing everything down or doing processes. No, it's just being in that awareness, So obviously, sometimes it's when you change okay? Because we're always changing and evolving. And this is the thing with relationships. So we meet somebody when we are a certain person, okay? And then years go past and you've changed and your partner has changed, but you're still trying to have the same relationship. And this is where it's very important to grow together and separately, and recognize that if you're growing together or separately, that there is a point where you simply may not want to be together anymore, right? Or that the relationship is getting toxic. So sometimes what happens is that around you, it becomes very obvious. So I'm always the sort of person who tries to examine what's going on around me, because what's going on around me is always, I believe, a reflection of what's going on inside of me, even if I'm deluding myself and I think I'm fine. You see? So I always say to people, you know, when they're in a situation, why you, why now?
Yeah.
Okay, so if this happened or that happened, why did it happen to you now? Right? And so when I look at what's going on around me and I see, or what's going on inside me, or how I'm happy, or, you know, I then start to realize that either that is the time for a choice. That's the time where I need to choose where I'm going to expand to. Okay.
It's very scary for a lot of people. I mean, to let go of a love, and not only that, but you're going to step out and obviously grow, which is also uncomfortable.
Of course.
It's two very uncomfortable things simultaneously.
Yeah,
you know,
it's very scary. It really is. And, you know, I think that it's perfectly okay to be any way that you want to be. So just because I'm this way and this is how, you know, I've dedicated my life to living in that way and trying to live in honesty and integrity with myself, okay? And of course with other people. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. I make loads of mistakes, but at some point I get to the point in my life where I think, okay, now I need to make a choice, right? But if you're the sort of person who makes a decision, let's say, to stay and grow within the relationship, that's also correct for you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a choice, okay? But sometimes staying in a relationship which is stagnant is much scarier than doing something completely different.
It's so true.
Right? And it will keep repeating itself. This is the thing, that if you don't change, and it's not just about you, by the way, you both need to change. So in a relationship is two people. You know, it's never about one person or the other. And so if you're not both willing to change, if you're not both willing to recognize this thing, there will be, you know, some sort of separation.
Yeah, you both need to do the work.
Right.
You need to be willing to do the work and taking responsibilities.
Yeah.
No, 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, before I met Julia, I mean, it was so much easier to be the coach and traveling, and speaking, and you know, no one to really challenge you, of course, because you are your own island. It feels like, and then to go into a relationship with you know, a powerful woman like Julia, and it's been incredible, absolutely incredible. And also, when you're with someone like that, and she with me, we really do challenge each other to grow, and we've done some exponential growth in the time, and gone through some really wild and crazy experiences in such a short space of time. I mean, you know, when you read it in the book, it's a movie in itself, and it's wondering how most couples, I don't think, would survive such ordeal, such turbulent times. And I think, you know, the personal development that we've been in and involved has really helped to balance ourselves out and handle our emotions. But even still now, things do come up, obviously, to the surface for healing. And, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in your stage of development, everybody's going to have friction at some point, because that's where growth is. And, you know, I remember saying this before, that life, you know, when you met with resistance, it's like going to the gym. You need to pick up weights in order to grow muscle, and that's why you have resistance. And we're not getting out of this life without having resistance, without having friction. And it's then not taking everything personally. And for me, I was known as a sensitive kid growing up, and it's never great to be, I don't think, to be called sensitive, because what does that really mean? Everyone's walking on eggshells around you. And and it makes me sensitive to then feel like it's a personal attack on me because of my own insecurities growing up, which doesn't make it easy for a partner, obviously, because I need to when you are a sensitive person, it's very hard to discern if it's an attack or if it's just being sensitive.
Right.
And or if because before, I've been in situations where I didn't know if I was being manipulated or if I was manipulating, because I couldn't discern, because that was the kind of communication environment I grew up in.
Right.
So you don't know if it's happening in the relationship. You're wondering to yourself, is this normal? Who's wrong, who's right? And no love ever lives there, of course. And it's just finding yourself in the relationship, because obviously all these things are going to come up to the surface.
Right.
All your triggers and all the patterns and it's, I'm just sharing. This is, we're going through it. And of course, when, you're going through your journey, and it's awesome to have you here in Dubai, and just to do these sessions again with you, it's so, so powerful, because when you breathe in such a way, if anybody's ever done it or hasn't done it, you get these sensations. What is it called again?
Well, it's called tetany.
Tetany, that's
right.
the one.
But tetany's got a lot of levels to it. So you might have tingling and vibrations in your hands or your feet or your tongue, or you might go into cramping. It's unusual symptoms sometimes in the beginning, and there are different reasons for that. So even just yesterday, I gave a webinar on, the science of it and the spirituality of it, because I think it's very interesting to go into the science of it.
Yeah.
But I think that if you analyze these sort of things too much, then you really get away from the point. And the point is to overcome the resistance, right? So, you do get those strange feelings in your hands, tingling and vibrations, Yeah,
well, it's like a release of energy of some sort, isn't it?
Right.
I wanted to go back to, you got into breathing. For all the different modalities, why was it the breath, really?
Yeah.
Why did that capture you?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, actually. Well, first of all, and I was talking about this last night as well, because it just popped up. As I was growing up, I was always also a sickly child. I always had allergies, asthma, my nose was always blocked. I remember going to the doctor, having to take so much medication, even experimental injections, so that, I wouldn't have, they would inject the thing that I was allergic to into my body so that my body would build up resistance. We tried so many ways. My breathing was terrible. I was always a mouth breather because I couldn't breathe through my nose. I was always clogged up, right? And it was something that I could never solve. I remember sometimes, for example, really embarrassed being on a date or something, and, I'd be fine and I'd do my makeup and go looking really, really special, and then I'd be on the date and I could feel my nose swelling and my eyes start watering.
Oh, my God.
And all sorts of things going on. It's really, really not a good breather.
Yeah.
Okay. And, of course, as I started becoming a little bit me more, I realized that I like exercising.
Okay.
Because in my family, my brother exercised and stuff, and I remember that there was an interest in exercise, but it wasn't something that we were really encouraged to do. We were encouraged to be academics, right? So I started exercising. That didn't solve the problem, but of course my breathing started getting better. Okay. Then I found a great yoga teacher, and that really changed my life. It really did. And we started doing pranayama. So And she was really into the breathing. So she was a very classical, strict yoga, hatha yoga.
Yeah.
We'd spend 15 to 20 minutes breathing before the class. And that 15 to 20 minutes of breathing really changed the way that my body was able to accept resistance. Okay? So what I really, really understood from her and in that period of my life is that when you breathe, your body reacts differently to resistance. Okay, so it's easier to surrender. When it's easier to surrender, your body does more things. Okay, so in actual fact, yoga is simply about breathing, surrender. It's got nothing to do with pushing. Your body goes into surrender and therefore it can make the stretches better. Your body goes into surrender, therefore it's got more balance. Okay? Because if you're trying to be balanced, you won't make it. If your mind is in it, you won't make it. It's only in the second or the 2 seconds that you let go that you actually can hold the pose. Okay. So all of that became very, very much embedded into my body because I got into yoga in a big way and I loved it. And that's where the breathing started. And that's when my breathing changed. Okay. And I started realizing the power of the breath. Really got it.
Okay.
You know, and of course, at the same time, I was doing Qigong and I was doing body work. I'd already become a healer. And I could understand when I was working on somebody's body that their breathing and my breathing, when there was an alignment, a much deeper healing would take place. Okay? So the breath came into my life. It came into my life in a humongous way. And then one day, one of my friends said to me, hey, there's this guy on the island and he's doing something which is just breathing. You're going to breathe for 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try it because I would try anything, right?
Yeah.
And I went along to that and we did that breathing session, which was rebirthing. And I couldn't believe it because it was such a psychedelic experience. I mean, I saw it all, you know, I had the whole Bollywood experience, colors, dancing, everything.
Not everybody gets that though.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but I mean, why do you think you had such an experience? Because I don't think I've had all the colors and everything else
Yeah.
personally.
Well, absolutely, and I get it. And this is one of the things that a lot of people ask. And even I remember being on a webinar a few weeks ago with a scientist, and we had that conversation. Why do people get this and other people don't get this? And he actually said it's just beliefs and learned behavior. Which I found very surprising because I thought that something must happen in your mind which causes these psychedelic experiences. What's happening? And he said, you know, it's simply that, it's simply learned behavior. So the way that you were raised, the things that you believe in, make you capable of having those experiences. So I'm not really sure if that's true or not, okay? The only thing that I do know is that one of the things that really works is surrender, okay? So how much is the person who is breathing capable of surrendering to those states, okay? And it's always got to do with safety, how safe you feel, right? So the safer you feel and the less that you're trying. And the more that you are in flow, the more likely you are to get into spiritual states. But literally, some people are visual, other people are
Auditory.
Auditory.
Aesthetic. And
yes, completely. They feel it or whatever it is, and it's very different for everybody.
Okay.
It's very personalized experience.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are some methods now in, in breath work, which claim that by doing their method, and I haven't tried, but they claim that by doing their method, you can definitely have a psychedelic experience. So I'm not really sure about that.
Is there anything that's kind of challenged your experience or your belief in breathing that, that still the way for you, you know,
Yeah.
because obviously there's many modalities but this has been your thing for so long. But, you know, have you ever got to a place where it's like, is this the one still? Is this, you know,
Yeah.
like your own crisis or
Right.
anything like this? That's,
Yeah, I would definitely say the thing that challenged my belief, not necessarily in the breathing, but in breath work, is the politics around breath work. You know, so I know that a lot of people don't know about the politics around breath work.
No.
Okay, they've got no idea because they're not involved in the breathwork industry or in the breathwork community. And I think that having also been very close to Leonard and his whole idea about community and faith and spirituality, because he was very spiritual, he didn't care about science at all. He'd go into big conferences with medical professionals and just blow their mind, and they'd all get upset and walk out, you know, because he would just laugh at them, you know, like challenge their reality.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about him, that he simply didn't care what anybody thought of him, you know.
To get to a place like that, to not, I mean, look, this is part of the podcast, of course, is to challenge people, and it takes a progress, and I think time to get, for me to be in a position where it just doesn't matter who's in front of me, to trigger them completely and watch what unfolds.
Yeah.
I guess it would be harder to do it with a friend, I feel. It's got to be a complete stranger I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, obviously you talked about the politics and, you know, there's always going to be politics about something. Does that then affect your feelings towards breathing, or just how it's managed? Like religion obviously has its politics. And
Yeah. Well, no, not towards, I would always say that, you know, the way that I know that I really believe in something, is my response when I'm in situations which are very urgent.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, sometimes I would say, you know, well, yeah, I don't really believe in one religion or another, or, you know, I think that religion is universal and all of this, which I do truly believe that religion is universal. It shouldn't be one person or another, or, you know, one God or another. I mean, I think that is very, very human. It's not real. For me, it's simply not real. Well, you know, when I'm on a flight, you know, and there's a lot of turbulence and it's really, really frightening, well, I pray to Jesus, because that's what I grew up with. You know, I kick back into that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that is the crutch. Yeah. Okay, Jesus, help me. Yeah. Okay. So I know that the breath for me is the number one thing, because when I'm in an urgent situation, I always turn to my breath. Okay. And it always helps. Okay. And so, no, I definitely, I've never lost faith in the breathing, but I have lost faith in people. Okay. And the thing is that because breath work has always been about community and love and spirituality and raising consciousness and creating a new earth and you know, a wonderful way to live and all of this. And then you're in a situation with a bunch of people who are all squabbling with each other and don't agree with each other, and there's competition and you know, and even if they say those things, you can feel the competition. You can feel the inferiority complexes coming out and all of this. And sometimes I would say that my faith in humanity has definitely been compromised, right? But when I get back into myself and into my faith and into the breath, I feel ready to admit that we're all human and we all just come from our programming, okay? And you had asked me a question before, which I think that I didn't really answer, and that was, do I really think that we're capable of overcoming our patterns completely forever? My answer is no, I don't think that we're capable of overcoming our patterns completely forever, right? I think that there are periods where we feel really, really good and we're good and strong and great, and there are periods where our patterns will come up again to, you know, will surface again. But I do know that when you have got a level of awareness about it, it kind of becomes a choice of how long you wallow in it.
Yeah, I've noticed
Okay.
that with myself when
Right.
it comes up before.
Yeah.
I'll be out of the game and I would have to make decisions based on those patterns, and then I'd be met with the decisions I've made into my life.
Right.
But now it has less of a charge. You know, the patterns do show up.
Yeah.
But I'm tender towards myself, where before I'd be hard on myself as if I
Absolutely.
wasn't human,
Right.
and I needed to be perfect, and I had all these expectations on me. But now it's the more sort of human I see that I am, or I'm having this human experience, then it lessens it. It doesn't feel like it lasts as long, and then I feel like I can actually connect more to myself and to people.
Yeah.
I have more empathy,
Right.
because I have more empathy for myself, and it really is helpful breathing has helped. You know, having a conversation yesterday really helped. Doing Hoffman, I did. Even the Tony Robbins UPW,
Right.
all of it helps, because if we're always going to have these patterns, I mean, especially yourself, who hand-selected by Leonard Orr, who you've been doing this for such a long time, and you've taught so many people around the world, you know, you are saying, look, these patterns are still showing up.
Of course.
So for me, it was like, I want to be, I'm writing it every day, I will be free of patterns.
Yeah.
I'm already predicting my future self.
Good luck.
I am, you know, my body is now a rainbow.
Yeah,
you know, whatever
exactly,
it is. You know, it's like, okay, Alex.
Yeah.
But you know what? That is what I'm moving towards. I would love to not be triggered. I'd love to be a Leonard Orr character, or some of these guys, just completely not be affected and you know, end up. But you know, again, it's an expectation I have of myself,
Right.
and it doesn't matter. It's wherever we're going on this journey. I mean, the fact we're having this podcast now and having, you know, a conversation about it, you know, it's like accepting how human you are.
Right.
Because I have put so much expectations on myself, but the more human we are, the less expectations. But you know, high standards. You know, you want to, for me, leave an impact. You know,
Right.
or something. What do you want to leave behind? What would be your final lessons for people? Something that you want people to know about you, and to think, what was Katia about?
I just really want people to value their humanity. I think that's the most important thing right now, because I feel like I have done the circuit. Like, for example, I've been in that space where I really, really wanted to become a superhuman. Okay. And it's not that I don't believe it's possible. I do believe it's possible. And you choose your experience, and you can try to become a superhuman. But I believe that superhuman qualities are misinterpreted. Okay, so for example, there are athletes out there who can do superhuman things because they've trained very hard to do those things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've solved all of their other problems. Okay. So, for example, I've worked with several Olympic athletes who are incredibly good at what they do. But that doesn't mean that they're good at their relationships. It doesn't mean they don't resent having had to wake up every single day of their life from the age of 6, to train.
Yeah.
Okay, those people really had to train their bodies to get into that condition, and there are a lot of things that are taken away from their truth and their reality for them to reach that standard. Okay, so I think that people out there, they've got a very deluded idea of what it is to be superhuman, right? And I think being superhuman has got a lot more to do with surrendering to your capabilities rather than enhancing them through too much work. Okay, I think that there is a combination there. So if you want to be really good at something, yes, you have to work at it. Okay, but at the same time, if you are working at I'll give you an example. I remember reading something recently, and it said, it was like a little poem, and it said, when your heart, like it was comparing a tree to grass. Okay, so if there's a storm, it's much more likely that the branches will break or a tree will break simply because it's so hard.
Yeah.
But the blade of grass will just continue to grow, you see, because it's soft and flexible.
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to use that to talk on stage, actually.
Yes, and it's very beautiful, and I think that it's a very, very important thing to remember that you don't know everything. You can't know everything. You can't be this superhuman person that you think that you are. You've got to stay soft. You've got to stay flexible. You've got to learn all of the new things that come up, and life changes all the time, and there are so many realities. And I think that one of the most wonderful things about being on this planet is experiencing as many realities as you possibly can. You know, life is wonderful, and all of the parts of it are wonderful. Even the darkest parts are wonderful, because if you don't have them, you can't be you, right? And so just really, that's one thing I would like people to understand, that being human and being a mess is okay and equally as beautiful as being a superhuman. Okay. And the other thing that I would like to tell people or share is please, 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 please take care of our planet. You know, I mean, like nature. Anyone who knows me knows how passionate I am about nature, how I can cry if you know, if I go outside and someone stepped on a flower or done something like that. I mean, you know, it makes me, when you get into nature at that level, when you really connect with nature through your breath and through surrender to what it has to teach you, then you can't be anything but humble. Okay? And when you are in that humility, when you realize how small you are, then the joy is enormous in comparison to thinking that you're superhuman. Okay?
What is more important? You know, where does the superhuman, I guess, quality come from? Is that ego-driven?
Right.
Which means, you know, disconnection, because you're not feeling enough, that you need to be superhuman, which means that you need to feel significant above anything else, above anybody else.
Exactly.
Which means that you're not really in touch with nature. And of course, we are going in a way technologically that people are feeling that not only do they want to feel superhuman and what they can do in their own capabilities, but what can they add on to themselves mechanically, or machines, and enhance themselves, which is, you know, again, utilizing the resources on the planet for what real reason? That, you know, is it not enough of what we already have? But again, it's human nature to carry on and growing and evolving, right?
Right.
And, you know, what are we evolving towards? You know, is it innately in us to get to a point where we create and wipe ourselves out based on the weaponry that we create? Or, you know, where are we going?
Yeah.
You know, because we've had civilizations before.
Absolutely.
I think, are we the most advanced ever? Or is just because we are now connected with technology in this manner, like these things that we're talking from? I mean, so, you know, we're looking at it and going, what is wrong? What is right? You know, is this too much? You know, COVID has shown us how important it was that it gave the planet a break from humans and things started growing back, you know. So certainly with some real positives from it.
Yeah.
You know, where does one go? You know, really, I mean, we've got the state of the world at the moment. Is it in the state? It's only in the state. If we pick up a newspaper or newspapers these days, look online, clickbait, you know, Donald Trump being arrested, or you only hear about these things. But if we're looking at the news, but is it really happening?
Right.
You know, here's questioning reality.
Yeah.
Is it only happening because we've opened it up? If we didn't look at it,
Right.
it wouldn't be happening. It
Yeah.
doesn't affect our lives at all.
Totally.
Why do you think people are so drawn into the drama, pulled into other people's situations? I mean, of course, it feels like there's a divide. People are saying there's a divide, especially in America. Let's put that on the map. And there's a split. What do you think that pulls people into this?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Well, I think that people are drawn into other people's drama because they're simply dissatisfied and bored with their own life, and they're not getting value out of their own life. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. So, it's so complex what you're talking about because. I totally get it, what you say, and I know from experience that if you don't open the newspaper, if you don't open the internet, if you don't put the news on and you're just living every single day as it is, like, for example, when I go camping for a month and I turn everything off and everything, then my reality is completely different. My reality is, oh, wow, look, the ants today, what are they doing? Oh, look what they've built last night when I was asleep, you know. And that's a wonderful reality to have. You know, the river is flowing differently today. What does that mean? Oh, you know what I mean? All of that is absolutely wonderful to live in a different reality and to come away from all of that fear and terror.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that fear and terror are an integral part of ourselves. And for example, in breath work, we talk about cellular memory a lot. So we talk about what our ancestors have been through and that it's imprinted in our cellular memory. So therefore, there's their fear that has been passed on to us, okay? Because drama is all about fear, okay? And then there is birth.
Yeah.
Okay, so most births are violent.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to talk about a taboo subject, circumcision. Okay, so circumcision is a violent act towards a baby who has got absolutely no idea why one of the most sensitive parts of their body is being cut for no reason. Okay, so many people say that that's the first time that violence and sexuality merge. Okay, so things are done to little babies that make them believe deeply in their cellular memory that violence is a part of reality, a part of life. Okay?
I can kind of see that growing up. I mean, for myself, my father was Jewish.
Yeah.
We kind of all went through that.
Right.
And, you know, there was definitely anger and violence
Course.
growing up. I mean, if it's been passed on, I mean, they call it the ancestral line.
Right.
Well, if you have a tradition that is embedded in the Jewish culture, ancestrally is going down and down, creating one painful act to the next.
Right.
It's true. I mean, a child doesn't know what's going on. It's being mutilated. And for the name of, you know, a sect, I mean, you know, for the reason it is being done. But yeah, I mean, the scars that are left behind, it's become so normal and so traditional.
And
that
also
it's just,
a lot of people that are not Jewish do it because, you know, it's like, for example, in America, everybody, the majority of people are circumcised. And it was just really something that only started happening in the last, 150 or 200 years. It became, I'm not really sure, but there is a whole story attached to it. But it just became like not a law, but something which was done to every single baby. Right? And so if you really, really look at that, if you look behind that and you think to yourself, okay, well, who decided to do that? And why did they decide to do that? And without wanting to go too much into conspiracy and stuff like that, but if you really think about it, you think to yourself, okay, hold on a second. You know, your survival chakra is being violated when you're a baby. Okay, and so it changes your perspective on everything, and it's not true that babies don't remember.
well, look, I'm right here, and I can go from my own experience that, from that place of pain, not even knowing it or not, I've had issues around that area from having shingles, mumps, just really just seems to be like painful experiences. And you know what? It's not knowing where it came from.
Right.
Even though I've had that experience, I don't remember it. But as you said, every cell in the body does remember.
Of course.
And if your pain is there, and that's all you've known, then it's not a surprise that you put yourself in situations where you're going to have pain there.
Right.
Because it's a familiar feeling.
Exactly.
Even if I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes a constant painful journey.
Right.
Unnecessarily.
Yeah.
But then if, obviously it's not just the Jewish people.
Yeah, of course.
But, there's a lot of things going out there at the moment. There's movements about pedophilia and things in Hollywood and Balenciaga doing their campaigns. And, it's kind of deep-rooted and it's starting to come to the surface, I feel.
Which is good.
Yeah, it really needs to come to the surface. And again, coming from a place not to judge, because, if society can come to a place where people can share their shames, share what's going on, rather than being caught. Because when you're caught, it's just a different story. But if you're coming forward and you're sharing that as a society, we can be more compassionate.
Exactly.
Because if we understand we're all human and we've all done things that we're not proud of, and some have obviously done more shameful things than others based on what's happened to them.
Right.
It's usually just passed down. And I would love to see a new earth, being what it's all about, that we create a space where people can come up and share and able to heal.
Right.
And so that I know personally, when you share that shame doesn't need to attract shame for events anymore.
Right.
Because you brought it out into the surface. It's healed based on the fact you brought light to it.
Right.
And that's the power of the truth.
Absolutely.
When you speak your truth and it's out there, it's healing,
Absolutely.
But I feel like we live in a society that if somebody does want to do that and they do share, they're condemned. They are crucified.
Yeah, they are.
And it would scare anybody else to ever speak their truth. And then we're all keeping hiding in the shadows, because what incentive is it to speak your truth if your whole life is destroyed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, quite often you see that the law also is not really always on the side of the person who has been victimized, right? So, for example, you get these stories of, young ladies who have been raped or abused or whatever has happened, or all sorts of things. It's not just about young ladies or whatever, children. Actually going forward and seeking legal help for it doesn't always work. The law can actually go against you and make your life even worse if you go forward. So I think there needs to be a recognition of that. I think that there may even need to be some sort of extra body where some of these things can be discussed, some things can be done without having to be intimidated. Because you've come forward and admitted something terrible has happened to you.
Well, look, you're looking at powerful men like Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
And you had these women and they weren't taken seriously because of one, then it was two, and then they had to.
Yeah.
Because, there was enough. But because they're powerful people, they have influence, there's money. Well, then you've got obviously corporations who are doing the same. You have pharmaceutical companies who, put drugs out there who could harm tens of thousands of people, kill tens of thousands of people, and then all they need to do is pay a fine because no one's actually held accountable.
Right.
Because it's not a person, it's like some entity, and they can hide behind this entity, ironically.
Exactly.
And we're all aware that this is not, I would say, part of the new earth for sure, where you're having corporations that can act so unholy,
right?
Because there's nobody to be held accountable, and that's what it comes down to again, isn't it? If you don't have faith, or if you don't feel there is something higher than yourself, it's very hard to then. You were saying earlier before, there's God's always watching. It's like, or you're in eternal fire, or what, But I don't see it that way. I mean, only till recently in my life, that there is a higher self. There is something, a divine energy, and it's going to be loving whatever happens. It's not like there's burning hell afterwards. But it holds me accountable to be the best version of myself.
True.
If I just believed in nothing and that we're just worm food, then what am I accountable to?
Right.
Why does it matter then? I mean, hey, I might as well just
Sure.
start a company and just make about money, baby.
Exactly.
Who cares? Just whatever the cost is. I think that I think it does help. I mean, do you feel yourself having something there?
Of course, that's one of the things I really value about my family. Like this whole entire community and deep, deep, deep belief in God. Really gave me this wonderful opening to be who I am. If I didn't have that, I may not have gotten to the positions that I've been in or went into the exploration as deeply as I have. My faith in God has always been there, and it's been, and it's one of the things that's, in many ways disappointing about life is that people use God, right, to justify certain things that they do, okay? And to me, the whole concept of God is this higher power which you or I need to be aware that I'm just a teeny, teeny, tiny, tiny little piece of, okay? And that within that beautiful, huge, amazing, loving power that I am a particle of, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Okay? And when I try to turn away from this for any reason whatsoever, for example, something my mind is telling me or something I'm feeling inside of me or some fear or something, that is a response to the way that I've been brought up or whatever it is, I genuinely feel not well and lost. Okay? So I think that faith is hugely important. And I also think that there should be spirituality in politics, right? That everybody needs to understand that we're one vessel, okay? And so there are certain people now who may make the rules or whatever it is, but everybody needs to know that they're accountable at some point for whatever decisions they make. Okay, and that's the value of understanding that you're a small particle in a system which you simply will never be able to understand. You see, one of the problems, this is what religion is. Okay, so religion is just human person with their limited mind trying to create a story so that they can tell it to other people so that the next person will kind of understand something about God.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can't understand it. We'll never be able to understand it. And it's very, very good to come back to that.
Well, you can't get it from your head, that's for sure.
You can't get it from your head, right.
And, it goes again to why self-development and self-reflection is so important, because if you can't, most people don't know how to feel. Don't allow themselves how to feel, so they never really experience anything more than what they're mentally experiencing in this world. They're dissecting with their mind, they're separated, they're playing the game. Everyone's playing the game when you're not conscious. One pattern is linked to another, and it's this trauma response. And but when you come from your heart and you start to feel, then you're starting to heal. And when you're healing, you're starting to experience something that is not, it doesn't feel like it's from this world.
Right.
And when you're into that place, then you start to really connect, and you start to see a different truth that other people don't see.
Right.
And you start to see what's actually important, and you start to shift the values in your life. But has anything ever challenged you where you've lost your faith, or you feel like you're...
Definitely. Many times. Like, for example, even recently, because I live in Greece, and there was a terrible train accident. The Greek people will know about it. But there were two trains on the same track for up to 15 minutes heading full speed towards each other. And there was so much negligence from the government and from the people who were, whoever was involved in that accident, that those two trains hit each other full speed. And those trains, one was a freight train with stuff, whatever was on it, and the other one was full of students, university students, going back from a holiday with their parents because it was a religious celebration that weekend, and 57 young people, mostly under the age of 25, got killed, incinerated instantly.
Jeez.
Okay? And then following that, there was a, big political game, like whose fault is it? No, it's not our fault. Yes, it is our fault, and all of this sort of thing. And eventually, what's come out of it? Well, we still don't know what's come out of it. Nothing, no one has really been held accountable for that thing.
Well,
right?
It's hard to imagine anyone who'd want to take accountability, especially when we live in such a place of blame.
Right.
That people were going to be obviously persecuted.
Yeah.
No wonder people are skirting their responsibility.
Shocking. And then when all of the students went out and people went out and started to demonstrate, and people were grieving so much, and there was a whole entire episode of police brutality videos out there where people were, where the police were beating up students, old women, anybody who was there, just trying to break up the crowd, and all these people needed was an outlet to their grief, and to hear that somebody is being held accountable for this, which still we haven't heard anything. So in that situation, sometimes you think to yourself, okay, and it's not just in Greece, and these things are happening everywhere, right? But in that sort of situation where you're really deeply involved, because, for example, my daughter is a university student herself, and it could have been her, right? She's caught that train hundreds of times, okay? As a matter of fact, my other daughter was on the train that went up before that train, And so all of those things make you start to think, well, why would God do that? Why do these things happen? What about all those families? What about all those mothers? What about all those people that are in such deep grief who their children are never going to come home again, And that really sent me into a lot of grief, for sure. Okay, and yes, I do go through bouts of, let's say, existential crisis.
Yeah.
Big one.
Yeah.
But when I'm in that space, I feel so bad, And it's only when I start to do the processes, because after that I made sure and I went and I did processes so that I would get back into the connection. When I get back into the connection, I feel so good, So I don't know if that is just self-regulation, psychologists might call it something else or whatever it is. But all I know is that when I'm not connected to this faith, my reality is different and it doesn't feel very good. There's a lot of doubt in what I'm doing here, what we're all doing here. And my mind gets more and more complicated, more complex, and starts to take me down avenues that I don't like. Okay, whereas if I connect again to my faith and just get into that space where I say, okay, for some reason this happened, without diminishing what happened.
Yeah, it's a guilt, I guess, for a lot of people to even allow themselves to be happy.
Right.
And to feel it, because I wonder, why does it happen? And you could say it's maybe it's testing your boundless love for God.
Right.
Something like this happens. Well, how deep is your faith?
Right.
What is important? Is this real? I mean, is our experience here real?
Yeah.
You real?
There's that as well.
If something happens to you, was it really you, or was it a test for me to go, well, how deep can I go into love in my faith?
Right.
And if I feel then there's more love,
and
I'm feeling it in myself, then I'm not attached to anything. I'm not then I was connected, but I'm not attached. My happiness is not dependent on anything,
Right.
but on myself. And if I can really get into that place and I don't need anything outside of myself, then, does that make me human? Or, is that a guru? Or is
Right.
this, because there are tests out there. Should anything knock you away from you being your happy self, or from loving, or being in a loving state? Should anything ever take you away from that? If love is the beautiful state to be in, then why would we want to pull ourselves away from it, no matter what happens?
Right.
And it is that is what if something did happen to your child, it's happened, and I have to accept it and move on. How soon will I want to accept that? It's up to me to obviously grieve for the rest of my life.
Right.
Or do I choose, do I shorten that time? Am I able to because I feel guilty I need to keep mourning for my child, because then that's how I connect.
Right.
And it becomes that illusion to connection. Where can we go with this, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like it's...
I don't know. Absolutely. And there's so many, quantum ideas which are absolutely fascinating about why all of this is happening. And, you can keep reading hundreds of books about it and go deeper and deeper and deeper into that labyrinth. Really, honestly, it's a total labyrinth. And it's something that, many, many of my students ask me. Yeah. Right. So when we have seminars and stuff, they're like, well, where are you on this? Why do these things happen? Well, I don't know. And I don't think anyone can know. I think that that's the great mystery. Right. And it's, when there is a great mystery and it keeps you humble. And I think that that's a very important thing, to stay human and just realize that you cannot control everything.
Yeah.
One thing that does kind of help me is the thought that, so I don't believe in heaven and hell. I believe that heaven and hell is right here.
Yeah,
okay.
I've been there.
Yes, me too. But I do believe that, I don't know if there is a soul that carries on, which is what a lot of people believe, but I do believe that there is a value in not having a body. Right. And I believe that there is a fantastic value in having a body too. Okay. So it's all just different experiences. And I'm hoping that that thought can help me come to terms with situations like that. And if the time, or when the time finally comes for me, I will be able to hold on to that thought as I move into another experience, right?
As you transcend.
Yes.
Who knows what may happen?
Who knows? And this is the thing, and this is what we're all attached to. We need to know what's going to happen. Well, you can't know what's going to happen. Yeah. No one knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And, yeah.
I think it's a beautiful way to finish up the podcast.
Amazing.
So how can people find you?
Okay, so you can find me at Global Breathing Awareness.
Yeah.
Globalbreathingawareness.com. Yeah. Or katiaboustani.com. They can go on there, and that will give you all of the different handles, you know, the things going on and stuff like that. And Global Breathing Awareness. And, before we end this podcast, because I want you to talk a little bit more about the New Earth. Okay. All right. So Global Breathing Awareness is, I think, very aligned with this idea of the New Earth, because it's all about community and people being able to express themselves in a way which is beautiful and non-violent and truthful and honest and connect. So it really basically is a website which is a platform where people can connect with each other, learn more about breath work, learn more about us, learn more about rebirthing and rebirth breath therapy, which is my brand. I think that one of the most important things that we have in common, Alex, is that we are dreamers and we are doers.
Yeah.
Not just dreamers, but we're dreamers and doers. And so you've created this beautiful brand called the New Earth, and which I love the name.
Thank you.
And I love the concept behind it.
Yeah.
And I believe in the concept behind it.
Well, that is a start. So
Yes.
you're the one.
Yeah.
That's what it starts as, just one person. Okay.
And maybe you'd like to tell us a bit more about that before we
look,
finish up.
It's sort of, throughout this even podcast and why I bring certain guests on is to, explore the fact that we are all understanding, going through our own experiences and feeling what it is to be human. Because, being in hell, which I've been before, is to think myself needing to be something I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And having all these expectations and whatever else on me. Everything I felt like I couldn't share my past. And to be able to be in a space where I can share anything and whoever it is there is accepting it and just going, cool. Mm-hmm. And for me, that is, acceptance and love, is the new earth, because it's coming from the heart. It's not so much from the mind. And, that is a part of it. And of course, coming out of that, we have our cafe. We have in Alberari, that's sort of an embodiment of what New Earth is all about. And we have our self-love store concept. Again, it's another form of the New Earth, but how do we put it into, within the lifestyle? Mm-hmm. So, it's just a philosophy that's coming about, and it keeps growing and evolving. We keep attracting beautiful people to it. And it's kind of like, and I had a Christian, the other guest on, he said, it's kind of like a membership. Mm-hmm. You feel like, because I was describing in a way going, me and my wife were creating the new earth because we were going through our own challenges, and we wanted to know, is this really what it's all about, or is there something else? And we needed something to discern,
right?
Put our focus and attention towards, and and it's starting to evolve, and it's just it really helps me to hold myself accountable to keep staying in the new earth, because we built it, but I even had questions to myself going, will I be able to stay in it myself? Mm-hmm. I mean, and it meant that I had to keep showing up for myself and keep speaking my truth and keep writing the book, and not be afraid to put everything in there for other people to read and heal based through my own experiences. And my thing really is, my coaching ability when I'm with people, when I'm able to notice patterns or join the dots and understand why, you're doing this because of that experience then. So you bring your self-awareness, so you can then, resolve it. So my book will be me, my life, but then I'm coaching myself. And it's going to be quite interesting that people can go on that journey with me and start to see and join the dots and start to see that it's not just coincidences, but it looks like there is something guiding you based on your experiences. And I really want to kind of map it out, as best I can, so that, it's sort of like a roadmap. And that's what the New Earth emblem actually is. It's above the camera, but it really shows, it's a roadmap. It embodies all the elements.
It's on this coffee cup.
That's the sun. That's the New Earth Cafe logo.
Right.
Which is it's a beautiful cafe in Alberari based on the chakra concepts.
Okay.
And then we have our New Earth emblem.
Right.
That is kind of like a roadmap, and we've done videos on that before. But look, anybody who's up for coming out for a coffee or a juice, a smoothie, the cafe is there. Alberari people wouldn't believe it, but when you come to Dubai, you think the urban jungle, but here it's just a beautiful paradise.
It really is.
Beautiful birds, just nature everywhere. And what can I say? If you're looking for a bit of nature, you want to get out, come join us. You'll probably see me there. You can have a chat.
Absolutely.
More than happy to.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I get to plug my own stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to mention that one of the things I love about your cafe is that I know that if I go there, you see, because we all have a lot of beliefs about what the new earth can be, okay? And one of them is an earth which is sustainable, an earth which, where that what's going into your mouth is not really damaging anybody or anything, that everything is ethical. And this is not just got to do with your cafe, but with life. Because if we were all living as much as we can in an ethical way, then things by default would change. And so what I really love about your cafe is that when I go there, I know that what I'm eating has been sourced ethically. And I know how important that is to you because we've talked about it so deeply, and I know the research you put into it and everything like that. And when you know that what you're eating is not tainted with any violence towards anything whatsoever, not only does it physically go into your body and make you feel better because of that, but you feel better about eating it.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel better having a business that is not harming any animals. But, I'm saying other people who have businesses, no judgment.
Yeah, of course.
But, it is great to have something like that. And also, it's the crazy things that we have on our menus that are quite unique, I have to say. And absolutely.
One of the best menus I've ever seen, honestly.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked. I mean, we kind of fell into the business because I loved cafes. I used to travel around, and every time I was speaking somewhere, I'd always look for an organic cafe.
Yeah.
And I've taken the best bits of everything. And, my wife and I've just sort of manifested this place. And it's
beautiful.
It is pretty incredible. And I can't wait to create more of them, if that is what it's supposed to do, that and put it into different communities, because it's about bringing the communities together. We're doing sort of workshops and talks, and you'll probably be doing a talk maybe even next week before you go.
Absolutely.
Sure. So, if you're interested and you want to actually see Katia in person,
and
we'll put it out there. Hey, come and join us.
I hang out at the New Earth Cafe, so when I'm in Dubai for sure, and so
awesome.
I think it's a wonderful idea and very successful in the sense that you made it right. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to have you.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Right,
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Alex.
Much love.
Thank
Bye.
you.